Well, well, well. Sorry about that mouth smacking. I definitely won't be doing that again. Alright, so what I'm doing now, well, I kind of want to monitor audio levels just a little bit. Alright, I think audio levels are good. So let me get my pop-out chat where I can see it in case anybody comes along. I don't think anybody will, but, might as well be prepared. Let's see. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, I've been doing a webcomic for coming up on 5 years. On March 23rd, that'll be the 5-year anniversary of my comic. The comic's called Eating Worms, and I'm trying to catch up for the 5-year anniversary. So I'm trying to make a comic every day at this point until the anniversary. Now, this has never been a daily strip, so I should have about 60 new strips by then. So I'm not doing every day, but right now I'm going to be trying to do a strip a day. I'm a little behind, so this is my way of trying to motivate myself. Now, normally, there are a lot of ways that I work on comics, but most often what I do is I take an idea I have and make it into a rough draft. Basically, very just crude drawings, tiny, and I just write the text I want, get an idea of the layout I want, maybe experiment a little with a background or something. But primarily it's just to kind of figure out the pacing, what the joke's going to be. I have some rough drafts I could work from. I am not working from a rough draft right now. Probably would have been a good idea to announce what I'm doing so like somebody would watch this, but it's probably for the best if nobody sees it. So where was I? Sorry, I'm going to trail off a lot. I don't know why I'm apologizing. It's not like anybody's watching. So I'm not working from a rough draft today. I guess this is my own personal humiliation ritual just to put myself on the spot so I can fail. But for reference, I don't always work this small. In fact, usually I don't. But today I'm working small. I'm hoping it'll make this a little bit easier. Now, yes, it's a little harder to draw at a small size, but I can't fit as much text, so I have to kind of streamline things a bit more. So we'll see how it goes. But this quarter here for reference, this quarter is much older than I am, which is just kind of interesting to think about. But yeah, that gives you a sense of the scale. So now I got to try to come up with an idea. So there are multiple ways I could go about it. Is I could just keep drawing characters and just have them talking and then figure out the words afterward. That's not how I normally work, but if I have nothing else, that might be how I do this. But yeah, this thing here, this is you can see it's folded back on itself, but this is a little kind of spiral bound index card holder, and I just punch holes in my own index cards. When I bought this, it had index cards in it, but they were ruled on one side and blank on the other, like a standard index card. These are blank on both sides, which I prefer, obviously, for making comics. But normally I do 2 panels on a card, not 4. It gives a little bit more space, and I do them in a different orientation. So, like these 2 across here, this would be 1 panel, and then this would be 1 panel right up here. And normally I divide them. I don't normally have them bordering directly on each other, but I don't stick to a specific format, and it doesn't really matter now. I'm just trying to get stuff done fast. So what I'm trying to do, my goal is right now I'm 4 behind. So if I do 4 today, 3 behind, okay, because I'm not behind until midnight on another one. So if I do 4 today by midnight, I'll be caught up. That's probably not going to happen. In fact, I'm only intending to stream making this one, so we'll see how it goes. I'm just stalling right now. That's really what I'm doing. I'm just rambling so that that I don't have to write anything. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Before I get started properly, I think I'm going to take just like a minute and a half break to send an announcement to some of my friends and see if anybody tunes in. So I'll be right back. Alright, so I'm going to take this opportunity just real quick to point out this comic here. This is from when I was doing some daily strips. This is not part of my main series. This is over a year old now, just a little bit over a year. It's from December of 2024. So, I don't know, I just thought this was a funny idea. I don't actually make very many comics on the toilet. That's something I used to do a while ago. I had a terrible job, so I would just sneak into the bathroom because it was better than just standing around doing nothing and just feeling my life waste away. But I don't know. I think it's funny to make these little comics, but I don't want to do it too much. Otherwise, people are probably going to think that I do this all the time. All right, so we'll go ahead and get back to the comic I'm working on. All right, so this is going to be a little tricky because I'm using push-to-talk, which is something I really recommend if you are at all concerned about live streaming. You know, like if you share a living space with people, that way, if somebody starts talking to you and you don't want it to end up on stream, all you have to do is just release the button. But it's something you do have to train yourself for. I'll find myself even still sometimes when I'm using push to talk, say something and realize I didn't hold the button. So, oh, I see Koi is on. Hey Koi. I honestly didn't expect anybody to tune in. Okay, so I'm trying to think like a character from Eating Worms. And I think I might have to. Great. I have two cats on either side of my door, and they're just gonna start making noise. So if you guys hear that, I'm sorry. All right, yeah, Koi, thank you. Those are uh, I'm very encouraged that you think so highly of this opportunity to see me work. So I guess this is one of my characters from Eating Worms. His name is Cameron, and it didn't start out this way, but he has really just kind of become my self-insert character. I mean, he was always meant to represent me to a degree, but it's become much more. Um, it's just become much more blatant over time, to the point where I decided just to give him glasses because I thought, why not? I feel like I don't know. I have to wear glasses every day. Might as well represent people like myself. Um, so he's usually frustrated about something. That's usually the driving force. So let's think about what would like a petty person, a petty, like kind of emotionally immature person find themselves, annoyed by. I'm not gonna ink this on the stream, I don't think, unless I just really feel like it. Um, but I will get the penciling done, hopefully. I think Koi's trying to help me out with some ideas. I do appreciate that. But it's got to be something really specific that I personally identify with. Um, so Koi, you know me a little bit. You might be able to think of something. I don't expect you to though. Just if you want to for fun. But I think I'm gonna move on to the next panel. That's what I'm gonna do. And if you could see the setup I have here, it's really janky. I just have a tripod, a tiny tripod on my desk, and I'm having to work underneath it at a tiny scale, which I chose to do. I did this to myself. Um, all right. So let's say he's mad about. Hmm. This was a really inspired idea to put myself on the spot. I can't even think of anything. This is a very accurate portrayal of what it's like to try to come up with ideas for a comic strip. Maybe not for everybody, but I'm as a writer, I usually wait for inspiration because when I just sit down and try to make it happen, it doesn't work. But I've been told before I just need to get disciplined about it, and I agree, I do need to do that. But I get so few results, it's very discouraging. So I just I'm thinking about doing these streams every evening until the anniversary. And who knows, maybe I'll like it and I'll keep doing them. But I think I'm gonna have a look at my rough drafts, and I'll give you guys a look too. Well, I guess just Koi, but you'll get to see if you are still tuned in. All right, so I have to talk about this one because it matches my little break card. This here. So similar theming of working. Well, this one's not actually working on a toilet, so we'll go through this. So he walks into the restroom. He says, "Oh shoot, I forgot my phone. I should go back." And he says, "Am I really so allergic to calm that I need to have my phone just to poop?" And in the last one, he says, "I've got to reclaim my life from these algorithms. It's time I got my dignity back." And then the punchline is that you hear the plopping sound. So he's talking about dignity, but you know, you can hear the function, the bodily function entering the toilet. So, you know, I think it's an inspired idea. But you know, let's not decide too early. I've got other rough drafts here we could look at. So let me see if I can curate another one. This might be the perfect one to work with because it has Cameron ranting about something. So this one's about Valentine's Day. He says, "There's no winning on Valentine's Day." Jared, the one with the hat, says, "How so?" Cameron says, "Either you're single and the whole holiday exists to rub it in, see, or you're in a relationship and have to get an expensive and/or thoughtful gift." And then I forgot, this one won't work because it's too many panels because it has some on the back. I could try to simplify it though. Jared responds with "so," and then Cameron says, "I'm stingy and I don't like having to think." It's a little hard to read these sometimes. And it's my own handwriting, so I only have myself to blame. Let me see if I can streamline this. So, already, I'm going to give you guys like a little bit of a lesson here in how to streamline comic like this. So normally I like to give things a healthy pace where there's a prompt and a response in separate panels, but you can condense them into one, especially because this is so short. Like this would be fine to put here. So I just put, how so. All right, so that's already cut one panel out, so we can just skip here. Now, an issue I see is cramming all this text, because the next thing I would do is maybe simplify these two. But that's not going to work because there's a lot of text here. I think I can barely fit it as it is here in one per panel. So where I'm going to cut a panel is I'm going to cut it here. So I'm going to cut this one out and just cut to the punchline. So he's going to say, "I'm stingy and I don't like to think." And let's see. Now, and then probably what I'll do here is have Jared ask, or say, ask "so," like he does in the fifth panel originally. So that's simplified. Now you can see here some minor differences. He's pointed the other way. I'm just going to go with that, and I'm going to flip their orientations. Typically, I like to do, and it's a little bit lazy because in real life it doesn't necessarily work that way, but the first person to talk I always put on the left and have them face the right. And that's just because, English reads left to right. We're all very accustomed to things just you start on the left and work to the right. But if you want a little bit more realism, something more true to life, then conversations could happen the other way. Now, in this case, it's not a deliberate choice, but I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to frame these where you can see the two characters at once, but here it's a little bit of a close-up, so Jared would be standing just out of frame. So I'm not going to draw him in this frame, but in subsequent frames, or at least one of the subsequent frames, I want kind of more of an establishing angle to fit both of them. But we'll see. The requirements for text might make that not possible. Now this is interesting here. My rough draft is actually bigger. These drawings, they're slightly bigger. They're almost, actually they're so close to the same size. Normally my rough drafts are smaller than the final work, but I just think that's interesting. Okay, so we're gonna work with this. I think that's pretty ideal, and clearly I'm not just gonna have an idea while I'm trying to be talking. So let's see, the first line, there's no winning on Valentine's Day. So here's a tip. If your hands shake, on some days my hands shake and some days they're fairly steady. Right now, they're pretty steady. You can see there's a little shake there, but sometimes it's much worse and makes it harder to make straight lines and clean lines and all that. But you can hold your breath, and that usually helps. If you just kind of hold your breath and just kind of very slowly breathe back out. So let's see. I'm just going to write. Now, one good thing, I don't know, I'm thinking I'm too close here, but we'll go with it for now. I'm actually writing smaller than I expected, which is good. That's going to keep this more legible, because even though it's tiny here, on a screen it's going to be bigger and people can zoom in. So as long as it's clear, so that when it's zoomed in it's not muddy and it's, a decent resolution, then this should be fine. So let me just... So I'm not watching the computer screen while I do this. There's not quite room, because I want to keep this, if I did this here, you can see it's not on center, and I already got a little bit of a slope here it's not quite right. I usually fix that stuff when I ink, or at least try to. It usually doesn't turn out great, and so I usually do some stuff on the computer to rearrange the letters and words a little bit. But you can see that's a little bit more than I would like. So I think I'm going to leave Valentine's where it is, and when I ink it, I'm just going to offset it a little bit. But I do need to remember Valentine's is capitalized, and there's always an apostrophe at the S. So we'll call that good. But yeah, I can't really use the computer screen much because there's just a little bit of delay. I'm not watching the YouTube feed, I'm just watching the... when I watch the screen, I'm watching the OBS window, but there's still just a little bit of latency. So I'm just gonna center this. I believe, I'll check before I ink, but I believe when you say Valentine's Day in writing, that you capitalize the word day. I could be wrong about that. So I'm gonna cut this pretty close, I feel like. Now, something I've started doing recently, and I kind of like the idea of, is making Cameron's word balloons angular rather than rounded. And then a lot of the other characters have rounded ones. I used to just kind of do whatever I felt like for any character, but I believe Pogo used to do that. The comic strip Pogo. Well, no, it didn't do that. It did something similar, where different characters spoke in different fonts, and I like that. I like ideas like that. I can't draw fonts reliably enough you can tell whenever I use the computer screen, because the lines get so messy. All the good lines I did by eye. So we'll call that. Nah, I was going to say good enough for now, but it's not. That's bad. Let me just... We're just going to start over on that line. And as a comic artist, it's good to be able to objectively make that call. When you look at something and you're like, that's not good enough. That's a good thing, because it's easy to feel like, oh, I don't want to have that time be wasted. I don't want to have to spend more time on this, but I think it's going to be worth it here. So let's try this again. I think we can push it just a little bit further. I really don't want to cram Cameron in the frame. I want it to feel like there's enough space for everything. And word balloons against the edges, to me, doesn't usually feel crowded, but maybe that's just because that's always how I work. Maybe to other people it looks crowded. That's better. If you work traditionally, this is what I recommend. All right, because I feel like generally my spelling is okay, without spell check, of course. But this is what I tend to do. Before I ink any word, it doesn't matter what it is, any word over 4 letters, I always double check by typing it into Google and, just to, or whatever search engine you use. I don't use Google as much now. I'm kind of trying out Yandex. I didn't like DuckDuckGo, but that's like basically the rule I do, because I've had so many times where somebody's pointed out an old strip of mine, or sometimes I've gone back to an old strip and just noticed a spelling mistake. And, a lot of times it'll be ones that kind of are easy to miss. And so just to have that extra security, it's like, even if it's a basic word. Now, I would not do that with theirs. I know that's right. But any word I don't use super commonly, even if it seems to be a basic spelling, if it's over, like winning, I'll probably just check and make sure that has 2 R's, because I have trust issues about that, since I would always write around like this with 2 R's. It just seemed logical, but there's 1 R in around. And there were many strips. There might even be some now I haven't had the chance to go back to, which is one of the things I want to do shortly after the anniversary, so I can get a printed collection together. But there were a lot of comics where I misspelled around. So, all right, I'm just gonna wrap this up real quick. There we go. So, because I'm not up against his head, I'm just going to do straight borders instead of having it taper. And I think that'll be the right way to do it. I think it's going to look cleaner, less tacky. Now, ordinarily, I would get really up close. I'm very nearsighted, which is part of why I just kind of instinctively work very tiny, because I work typically with my face very close to it. Right now there's a camera in the way, so I'm having to use my, not distance vision, but unfortunately for me, being about, somewhere between 6 and 12 inches away from this is not really close enough for me to get the cleanest lines I would want. I can write pretty well, though. I think this writing is pretty legible. I wouldn't say it's, winning any awards, though. So we got 1 panel down, which was already drawn. I just wrote text on it. But this should go quicker. The hard part was picking I almost forgot something, but picking the script. So Jared's going to say how so. So this breaks my personal comic etiquette. Typically, you're going to read left to right, top to bottom. So worst case scenario, like I have here, this is really not ideal. But you can see, the words are over here. He's supposed to be speaking first. So if I make this lower, I think that'll help give that impression, because I think this might not be quite low enough. So I'm just going to write it again. But that's like, it's not even a personal etiquette thing. That's just like in America, well, in any English-speaking country, we read left to right. So you really want to have first sentences be on the right side. I didn't have room for it because this was simplified. I'm weighing my options here because my other option is to put how so in this panel. So I'm going to compose it to try to leave room for that. And then if it fits comfortably, then I'm going to go with that. And I also did not do a balloon around this yet. Let's do one right now. Just a simple. Probably should have centered that text on where the bubble would have been, but I wasn't sure yet. So we'll probably get rid of this. I shouldn't click my tongue, it's annoying. Any vocal stem you develop that's you're subconscious, self-conscious about, I don't really know how to get rid of them other than if you record videos of yourself frequently or live stream. I think then maybe that motivates you a bit more to try and work them out of your vocabulary. Okay. So Jared, when this started out, the series started out, he had a red hat. Now it's blue. He's been given a blue hat. And for a while, I would indicate that by doing these lines, these, what's the word? Diagonal lines. Diagonal hatching lines just to imply it's darker. I kind of abandoned that at this point because I'm like, okay, you get the clue, you get the picture. Every time I show them in color, I draw it blue now, so it doesn't really matter. So I'm probably not going to bother to hatch this. I'm just trying to, simplify it. I don't think it looks great anyways, so his eyes are a little bit off. Both of them really. Let me just. His nose isn't far enough to the right. Let's try this. And this is going to cut like that. Okay. He's too high up. I need their heads closer to the bottom because I'm going to need a lot of room for text. Normally, I do a better job of my initial compositions than I do when I'm streaming. It's a different process. I can't get as close, and I'm kind of focusing on, multiple things. So let's see. I'd say we'll just rough out that he needs at least this much real estate to say what he's going to say in the next panel. So let's be a little bit optimistic and say I can fit it in this here and just forget these boxes. So then I can fit how so in here. And so let's just kind of really rough out. It's too big, but that's okay. This is just a extremely rough version of the composition. So I typically draw Cameron a little bit shorter, which here is kind of a necessity because of how I drew this. But a good artist will redraw if the scales aren't right. I am a lazy artist, and I'll admit that. But typically, and he always has more to say too, which always necessitates him being shorter, because I, kind of need more room for him. So this one's a little bit. This is more detailed than the extreme roughs I was doing. I'm just kind of feeling this out. And I am watching the computer screen right now, which is why I'm a little bit both sloppy and kind of taking my time. Because these aren't final lines here. This is to give me an impression of where he's standing. So they are a little dark, though. These lines are a little dark for what they should be, but okay. So I decided that we were going to go with this. So so I don't confuse myself. Get rid of that. Okay. So normally I don't do text before characters, but I think I want to here just because I want to make sure that I have the room I need. So again, I'm sorry about the vocal stems. Got to try to work them out again because it's been too long since I've tried to rid myself of them. Man, my writing's getting smaller. This is smaller than that. That's probably not ideal because this is going to suck to ink. Okay. Single. And we'll go on the next line. If I could fit all the dialogue from 2 and 3 together, that would be kind of ideal because the flow would be better. It's going to break up a little bit here, but that's all right. It's a lot of text, so, and I can't fit both panels lines into here. Alright, that didn't need near as much room as I thought. Lettering's sloppier here than I would like, but I'll clean that up when I ink it. So we're just going to rough like that and give this a nice sharp point. Yeah, I like that. Keep it boxy. I'm going to center this a little better because it's clear to me now. Let me think. If I were ambitious, I could try to fit everything in here, but I'm just going to try to not crowd it. I think it's going to probably turn out a little bit nicer if I just leave it as is. So I'm going to erase how so from this panel and move back. All right. So gotta put it up high. Man, that's terrible. Question mark looks good. The top line looks good, but I can redo this better. Okay. That looks really clean, actually. Let's erase that. This is so tiny. It's unbelievably tiny. We're going to just let this corner just kind of be, you know. That's something that's nice when you're up at a border. You can just line it there. You could carve this out, but it's not worth the trouble. It looks fine. Okay, now let's get the likenesses, because this is a little, you know, it's not good. So, this isn't that far off from how I normally work, except I don't talk to myself, except maybe like swearing under my breath whenever I screw something up. That's something all artists should be accustomed to be honest. Not even artists, like any kind of profession that requires delicate movement. Man, when I make these like little robot figures out of metal, and they're very small. They're sculpted from various pieces and, you know, put together from scraps. And man, oh man, when I'm trying to engineer a tiny little, you know, piece of multiple pieces together, and it's just nerve-wracking. And if I bend a piece of metal too much, it's going to fatigue and break. You know, that's when the real big boy words come out, but nobody else can hear them. Again, sorry about the vocal stemming. I need to get a shock collar, and just whenever I catch myself doing that, just shock myself. Again, it's a bad trait to feel like you always have to fill silence, and that's kind of the person I am, is I do that all the time. And you could argue I'm doing it right now, but it's different. I'm making conversation here, or I'm trying to. That's usually how it works, though. Trying to make conversation, I'm just talking too much, and I catch myself doing it. That's the worst part. You catch, or I shouldn't project, because this is just something I do. I don't know if other people do, but I catch myself doing it. But it's like I can't stop. You know, it's like I'm aware I'm doing it, and I don't know, I guess I subconsciously think, oh, if I keep it going, I'll say something interesting or funny enough to, like, kind of offset the debt I'm collecting with just rambling about nothing and just annoying people. You know, I think, like, oh, maybe if I keep going, I can make up for it. It's the sunk cost fallacy. That's exactly what it is. So, trying to get better about that. And then this is probably going to make me worse, because that's kind of what you need to do if you live stream, is just talk all the time. Otherwise people get bored, and they'll still get bored because what I'm saying is not interesting. Man, this looks so much worse on the camera. I'm like, it looks okay, and I look up at the camera and this looks awful. It's like that sometimes. And see, now he looks taller than Jared. So I screwed that up. That, you know what that means. That means time to start over. Okay, how long have I been going for? Let me just check. 45 minutes. 45 minutes of nothing. Okay. saying okay, saying just, and one of my worst ones is, well, I trail off a lot just to begin with. I'm always jumping conversation topics. I can't stick to one. Like I go on tangents like crazy. Another thing I do is I constantly trail off because I'll expect to have something else to say and find myself with nothing else to say. So I'll use a word like but, you know. So that would be what, a conjunction, I believe. I don't know. My my only frame of reference is what I can remember of Schoolhouse Rock, but I think that would be considered a conjunction. His head's too wide, but that's fine. I'm gonna just thin it out because other than that, I think the scale's about right. So let me just put the nose there, put the mouth here, and I'm not gonna draw the eyes probably. I'll stick to the glasses instead. And of course, I've lost track of what I was saying. I think it was something about trailing off, and just implying I have more to say, and then just completely dropping the ball. That's not right. So yeah, it's difficult to figure out. You know, talking, having conversations is supposed to be normal, but it's actually not. That's an ugly fat nose. What am I doing? This is a very real experience here of what this is really like when I do it on my own. Except the stuff I'm saying now, I'd pretty much just be saying in my head, just thinking, you know. That's better. We'll call this good enough. His face isn't quite as thin as I would want, but if somebody asks, I'll just be like, oh, it's a different angle, you know. It's not that I'm a bad artist who can't stay on model. No, it's just you're mistaking the perspective I'm doing here. You got it all wrong. But I have it perfect. Okay, let's give him some little eyebrows to show his frustration. Those aren't supposed to be the tops of the lenses, and I hope audiences can tell that, but we'll see. And I screwed that eyebrow up, but we're going to move on. It's good enough. I'll fix it later. Famous last words. I'll fix it when I ink. Okay, so we're on panel 3, which in the rough draft is panel 4. So it's a close-up where he's at the bottom corner of the screen. I'm going to try to get it right this time first before I do the text. So let's, for a little rough kind of beginning sketch, I'm kind of liking how how the form is taking shape here. Let me just, my eraser's getting in the way. Again, sorry about the vocal stemming. In future streams, I'm probably going to pick some music and do a playlist on here, just with some royalty-free music. I've gone through YouTube many times through their content library of free stuff and found some listenable royalty-free music. I would love to just stream my Spotify on here, but maybe I'll try it sometime. But I won't do it now, and the reason is it's probably just going to get the audio claimed and just make part of the stream have no audio or something. I don't know. I've seen a YouTuber stream with copyrighted content before, and it looked like a nightmare. Okay, so his hair's too high up. Okay. I don't like that, but it's good enough. And he's facing the wrong way around. Look what I did. It's unusable. Okay, so I have this dilemma now. What I can do is I can just keep going and flip the character in post. But do I want to do it that way? Do I want to be a big fat cheater and just fix everything in post? I don't. And I'm not in love enough with this drawing to stick to it. So I'm just going to, this will be done when it's done. I'm going to try to do 2 tonight. So at least instead of just not getting behind, instead of just keeping pace, I'll be making up one of the ones I'm behind on. After the end of this, I will have been, streaming these for a month and a half at least. So at the end of that, I might be better at doing the streaming. But I was saying that I want to include some music just so the dead air isn't quite as dead. And I'd like to be better at holding people's attention. In real life, in conversations at least, and it's probably just because people are polite in real life, but I rarely get the impression people are like, oh, would this idiot please stop talking, or just like want to leave or do something else. I'm not going to say it doesn't happen, but I think it's a rare occurrence. What I need to do is try and figure out what kind of topics I talk about when I'm not doing a stream and just try to include that. Some humor would help too, but I'm drawing a blank. I write this comic and it's so hard for me to come up with an idea that's remotely funny. So not a great idea. It's not a great quality for a aspiring cartoonist, but I've committed enough effort down this path that I might as well stick with it. Good old sunk cost fallacy. But I also like doing it. As much as I complain and as much as I avoid doing it, I swear I actually like this. Okay, that's a decent form. I feel like overall I kind of like this better than the other one. The head shape's not as good, but I think I got the hair better, and I think that's kind of more important. Okay. Man, this shoulders up. This is my real workhorse. This is where I get away with murder. Is I sacrifice so much details on close-ups whenever I do this, and it helps me keep my sanity. Because if I draw elaborate backgrounds, which on some of these I do, it gets absolutely excruciating. Okay, I want... come on. That's pretty close to what I want. Now, I'm going to push this lens further forward so it doesn't feel like it's thinner than the other. Because the idea is you're seeing this at an angle, so this one's going to look wider than the other one by a little bit. But I don't want it to be so much that it feels wrong. There's a little bit of room to kind of, fudge it just a little bit, but... Okay. It's kind of a lot of lens there, but we'll go with it. Okay. Alright. Finally, we can write the text. So, what's smart to do is to line your paper so that, kind of like lines on notebook paper, but because, it serves the same function. You can see the words are very uneven here, they aren't matching in size, and you cheat all that stuff a little bit, because You know, you're not a font generator, and if you change your size, it's not going to adjust all the others. You have to do that all manually. So you can help yourself out by making some lines first to guide your writing. I'm going to say this is about the thickness of my rows, and I'm going to have a look at the panel I'm about to write, get an idea of how many words, and I'm just going to assume that I'm going to need, let's give it room for one more line just in case. Alright, so I'm not even going to draw, normally I'd draw the word balloon too, but I'm not even going to draw that because we're going to decide as we go. You know, once it's all written, then I'll do the box. Okay, so the line I'm writing is, or you're in a relationship and have to get an expensive and or thoughtful gift. Now, one thing I hate doing is breaking words like with a hyphen. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to start the word relationship. And since I'm out of room, just do a hyphen. You know, you've seen this before. People do that. So I need A-T-I-O-N. Now, but I think it looks tacky. I always do my best to kind of make the lines justified. In other words, like they kind of reach the same width from side to side. And, you know, if a word doesn't quite fit, I usually try to put it on the next row and space everything so it looks nice. But considering what we're working with here, I think I could push it further, but I think it's going to look nicer if I don't push it all the way to the edge. So I'm just going to go with it like this. We'll see how I feel about it afterwards. Okay, almost done with this line. I'm going to put thoughtful on its own. Alright, let's try this, because we already hyphenated one. So it's not really a big deal if I do another, I feel like. Now we're going to have to really cram gift so it doesn't feel like it's spilling too far. So I think what I'm going to do to kind of compensate this is I'm going to put the O here. And see how there's not really a space here? I'm going to just correct that right now. And I think that'll kind of balance everything just about how I want. See. So I start with a U, I believe, yes. F-U-L. Okay. That's pretty good. And by pretty good, I mean that's like the bare minimum. It's good enough. Good enough is really an important thing to understand if you're not a savant, you know, like good enough is good enough, and you can improve over time. Sometimes what's more important, because right now I have the 5-year anniversary is very important to me, and I want to have like a complete 5 years. You know, I want it to be like, this is my 5 years work. And at this point, the art has always been, you know, it's been good enough, I would say. And good enough is a broad spectrum when it comes to, you know, comic strips. but I would say it's on like the professional looking end of good enough, even if just barely. So, right now it's important that I just get a high volume out and that hopefully the writing is funny. And I think that's more important than individual strips looking their best. So, when I have more time, in other words, when I'm not massively behind like I have been for the majority of Eating Worms' existence, then I can take care. And I'll show you guys. I say you guys, nobody's watching, and nobody will be. That's okay. This is kind of just to help me work. But when this is over, I think I'm just going to almost forgot. Little so right here. Give it that little stem, and this is going to be rounded. So I want to develop this where each character has their own visual voice in the way their lines are written. So that's something we're going to try to think of ways to expand on, because right now this is all I have, the round bubble and the angular bubble. But I want to figure out a way to kind of make there be more to that, to distinguish. I want every character to kind of feel like there's something about the way that their words are visually represented that conveys their personality or the way they speak. But I was going to say, when this is over, I can just show some ones that I have. They're not inked, aside from one, which I could run and grab, but I don't know if I will. I'd have to get it from my folder, which is very close. I could get it. But, just kind of, I don't know, show something, since this is very inefficient. So, in the last line he says, and this is another close-up, and I'm going to stick, I think, with the close-up. No, I think I'm going to change I don't want it to mirror this. I don't want it to mirror that. But it might work if it mirrors this pose a little bit. What if I make this really distant? So what if it's like full body? Let's say this is Jared. Well, this is Jared, and then this is Cameron. Just kind of about that scale, feet here, kind of like that. Another thing I got to think about is what's the background? Where are they? I like to draw outdoors because it's easier. But narratively, I want it to make sense, kind of where they're at. And, while I'm here and while I'm streaming, I might as well just Google the spelling of stingy, just make sure I have it right. All right, yeah, I have it right here, so I'm just going to write the line. I'm probably not going to line it this time because it's short enough, I think. Hopefully it'll work out. Okay, So with my handwriting, there are little quirks because I was taught handwriting a particular way, as most people were. Very few people have the same style of handwriting. And something I like to do is I think they're called serifs on capital I's, or sans serifs. I can't remember which is which. So my other interesting characteristics are I make M's like that rather than sharp angles. They're rounded. Same with N's. For U's, I do a stem. That's more common, though. That's not very unusual. But, that could be, when I do a capital N even, I do it also soft and with a stem. And so that's something, characteristics like this I kind of stick with. With stuff like eyes, just for the sake of speed, I'm trying to get used to not doing them, even in my personal writing, not just for the comics, but because it feels kind of like a waste of time. Although capital I's and lowercase L's can be difficult to distinguish when you do that, usually it's not an actual issue. And then, you can always give an L just a tiny bit of a curve at the bottom. I've seen that a lot. So now for computer fonts, that becomes more important and causes more issues. But, when you're writing, it's not as big of a deal. Okay. Stingy. And I don't. And you know what I'll say? You can look. You can look at other comics. A lot of times they do all caps in a very rigid style. Like you're not going to see an N like that. It's always going to be like that in most comics. But I'll say that's not set in stone. You can do however you want. And in the early days, I tried to and failed to make my handwriting more standardized. But I've come around to think, first of all, I failed at that, so it just resulted in some inconsistency, which was annoying. Second, I think there's a charm to that level of personalization, as long as it's clear and legible. Just because it's a little bit different isn't a problem, like it's just kind of a unique characteristic. And I prefer to do hand letters to writing. Yes, fonts are easier. But I don't know. I just enjoy it all being on the page. So that's why I do that. So now just the last of the line. I'm going to center it a little bit. That's too close. I want to give that a little bit more space. And let's fix these up. Let's see. Having to think. Now I like to do ellipses where it trails off, and maybe that's just because I'm scatterbrained and I always trail off, but I use ellipses too much, honestly, but it's okay. If AI used ellipses a lot, I would be in trouble because people would see it and think it was AI. But fortunately, my writing is uniquely flawed. So I don't know about uniquely overall, but at least it's not flawed in the same way that AI writing tends to be. So with relying on the same crutches or bad practices, because there's other issues like run-on sentences or using commas when other types of punctuation would be better. Comics tend to stick to very simple punctuation. And so I mostly stick to simple stuff. That's the nice thing is grammatically you're a little bit more free in a comic because it's kind of expected to be simpler. And I also try to represent, my characters, they're just talking. They're not writing. So if somebody generally says something with the incorrect grammar, I'll write it that way because it's supposed to be real. I just want the punctuation to be correct. Kind of my benchmark is if you're doing a direct quote for, news reporting or something, however you would transcribe a direct quote where somebody uses the wrong or incorrect grammar, then that's how I want it to be written here. All right, so just going to do a quick drawing, and I think I'm just going to do that for his mouth. And I hate to just kind of be lazy and have him be outside, but I think that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to have him be outside. There, now he has kind of a nose. It's so tiny. I got self-conscious about that because I looked up at the screen, but it's so tiny on here. Okay. Proportions, I still struggle with a little bit. I'm better at it than I used to be. But people are lanky, you know. They don't have huge heads. This head's a little too big proportionally, but it's close enough where I'm going to say it's all right. You know, again, if I had more time, if I wasn't like behind, I might be more strict. I do in the future want to focus more on getting better quality art. But yeah, so what I was saying, and that's not a belt. I'm just going to not ink this one. So, yeah, what I was saying is on here it's all blown up much bigger, but on paper it's so ridiculously tiny that like not doing a little line for the nose did not matter. But I was just looking up here and I was like, that looks wrong. Okay. Again, I'm like, that passes for a hat, and then I look up here and I'm like, it kind of looks worse. We'll go with it. I can't be a slave to every detail. It's like at a certain point, it's just better to have something finished. So how do I get his collar that small? That kind of works. When I ink it, we'll figure it out a little better. Okay. We're in the home stretch. It's almost done. So let's say the arm reaches about here. So, little tip, if you are, and I mean like really a beginner artist, if you do much drawing at all, you should already hopefully know this, but if you don't, you know, you're welcome. But this is a trick that will always make your characters look better. Never draw them exactly head on. See what I did here, where it's kind of what would this be? It's kind of like a 3/4 angle. Let me think. It's a 1/4 angle, I think, if we're going by, or wait, no, is it? Yeah, because it's clockwise 1/4. So let's say from a top-down perspective, that's facing straight, but this is where he's facing, that way. So like kind of 1/4 from the bottom. Unless clockwise starts at the top, then it would be not 3/4, it would be like 5/8. It's either an 1/8 quarter or 5/8 quarter, I think, but whatever, doesn't matter. So that already, it helps, because then you can draw the profile of the nose, you know, you can draw one ear, the silhouette of the hair, the silhouette of the chin. A lot of things that you normally have to do more like implying and get details better and more realistic, you can cheat it so much when you're at a little bit of an angle like this. I really think this drawing turned out great. I'm very happy with it. Probably fix that ear just a little bit. It sticks out a little more than I would like. But then you look at the body. Okay, you have the shoulders. And this arm is not obscured by the body. You're seeing it in front of the body, so it's obscuring the body a little bit. But his chest here is overlapping this arm a little bit. And that little trick will make stuff look better. If you draw characters from the side, but you don't do that where it's like, okay, the side that's closer to you, features are overlapping the body. The side that's further from you, the body is overlapping those features. It helps a lot. Even if your proportions are a little bit wonky, because mine usually are. I usually make the heads too big. Okay. So this is pretty close. Let's clean it up though. I just want it really clean. Not all over, but on these really fine details. Let's do that. We'll make that hand end there. I think that's pretty good. Have the shirt. Okay. Okay, we're gonna lower these feet just a little bit because he's not quite uneven standing with Cameron, which he should be. Oh, that looks so bad. Okay. That's pretty good. Let's lower the shirt to here and make arms ever so slightly longer. I think that's pretty close. Except this one, that's tricky. Yeah, small adjustments, especially at this scale, are very difficult. Okay, so what facial features should he have? He should have his nose. Eyes, mouth. Alright, we'll call that good. We'll say that that's good enough. Okay, now it comes to background. So, if they're at the park, then I want to do some tree trunks. If they're just kind of at a field, I can cheat a lot more, but it looks very simple when I do. So let's start with a cloud. I think that's what I'll do. Just kind of imply a little cloud here. Sometimes you can just do clouds and that's it, and that just kind of covers a multitude of sins, but we'll see if I feel like I can get away with that here. Okay. I think that's what we're going to go with. And then we'll give a little implication of grass. Okay, so behind his head, I want to keep the shape relatively consistent. It's closer up, so it's going to look bigger. That might technically not be true because of how far away clouds are, but in a cartoon, that's kind of how people are used to seeing things. So that's usually kind of what I live by more than what's... Oh, it depends. Some stuff I do kind of... I'm a stickler about realism, but not everything. It really is case by case. Okay. So what I can do here, just give some little shadow lines. Let me get where you can actually see that. And then I'll do the same here. Something like that. And so this is the tricky part. You've always got to get your, if you're doing wavy lines to kind of imply grass, you got to get that right. So that kind of looks better, but it's so tall compared to them. So let's try and keep this super tiny. I like these. I want to get them like that everywhere. Yeah, that's kind of working. I like that. Okay. So clouds, again, we're just going to kind of... I'm going to say this is a slightly different angle. Like maybe it's looking more up now. But he's clearly looking down. Like, I don't know. You cheat a little bit. You know, most people will not notice if you cheat things a little bit. You know, even I cheat so much, so I feel like I have a little bit of an eye for it. But if it's good art, you know, and if I'm focused on the parts that are most important, you know, I can miss a lot of stuff too. Someone may notice, but the people, I'll put it this way, the people you really probably care about are not going to notice, you know. The people who are going to actually take your work for what it is rather than just the technical details of the drawing. People who are taking in the thing as a whole. Those are the people you want anyways. So let's see if I can mimic the clouds we see here, if it's impossible. So I'm going to say he's kind of this funny shaped cloud here, almost a peanut shape that goes in and out. And we'll just say it ends about here, because why not? Not all clouds continue forever. Although I could do a cloud line, but you can see where it ends right here, so I'm not going to do that. That's something I should do more, is more of a cloud line, like it's on a cloudy day. I'll tell you what, the hardest thing to do when you're doing detail on comics is the horizon, where the sky meets the ground. And then what you got to do is when you're outside, just try to really pay attention to that, because it depends where you're at. Sometimes, even in a town, sometimes that line is divided by trees more than anything else. In a city, a lot of times it's broken up by the cityscape, and that's in a way kind of easier. But these characters live in an area kind of similar to my own, where it's like not so far from rural, but it's definitely not rural here, and it's definitely not like a big city here. We're close to a big city, but this is not. They try to call it a city, but it's not. Okay, so that cloud's high enough. We might be able to get away with saying it's obscured from where he is. So we'll just, because it's like, okay, yeah, here, there's a little cloud right there. There's more clouds in the sky. All right. So let's give you a little bit of a bigger view. I have it zoomed in so you're not seeing this here and that there. But all at once, kind of looks good. I can just take a little. Sorry, it trailed off. I just wanted to grab a quick screenshot of that. Let me try another. I didn't quite get as much as I would like. All right. So now I can send this to someone as proof that I did in fact work on a comic today. So that's done. That's it. Oh, well, okay, obviously it's not inked. It's not inked, it's not erased, and I'll probably have to do a little whiteout. Then I'll scan it, and then after all of that, I'll do the digital arrangement where I add like the banner and stuff. But for all intents and purposes, for what I set out to do today, that's done. But I want to grab something to show you, and then just show you a couple more on here real quick before I go. So I'll be right back. Alright, I'm back. So, this is a better reference for the size I work at. Now, let me get that quarter just to give you a better comparison. So there's a quarter there versus, and I can give you a better view actually. So let's give this a real good comparison. That's kind of good enough. You get the idea here that these are bigger. So been doing a lot of comics lately about making comics, because, you know, the Eating Worms is loosely based on my own life. You can see my watch reflecting on there. That's kind of interesting. So I want the characters, you know, for them to be relatable to me, they have to kind of do similar things to me, because I'm kind of a hack writer. But that's okay. You know, they say write what you know, so, you know, if that's considered good advice, then I guess I'm doing the right thing. Okay, so I'll read this. Cameron says, I'm trying to develop a more critical eye. Jared responds, why is that? You can see here, I hadn't quite decided I wanted to do that rounded thing, because they're both angular here. So he says, why is that? If I'm ever going to be a successful counterculture satirist, I'll need an edge. Jared responds, you've been cynical your whole life. Seems to me like you're already there. So that's not the whole thing. Here's the punchline. Let's see if it works or not. Okay. It's more complicated than that. Everyone's cynical these days. I want to stand out. I need something more unique, something post-mainstream. I want to be counterculture, but I don't want to fit in with the counterculture. It's a real dilemma. And then Jared says in response, you're so distinctly deranged, I don't think you'll ever have a problem standing out. That's the punchline there. So, I don't know. It's good, maybe it's bad. I think it's okay. I think it's passable. That's what I think of it, but, you know. So, you can see this little gorilla man I drew a long time ago. There's a very sloppy drawing of Cameron. You can see it's so off model, I didn't even give him the right number of hair spikes. Yeah, I had this clipboard a long time. There's other drawings on here. I just thought it would make a better backdrop than the Pac-Man mouse pad. Basic words elude me sometimes. Alright, let's have a look at this one. Let's see. You know what my comics need? No, what? Sex appeal. Genderless blob people won't cut it. Introducing a blob person with breasts. I worry about you. So, this is another one about making comics. Although he's just got a character design here. If you were working on a comic, those would be, you know, made into panels, but, you know, he could be doing one on a single index card. I've done that before. But he has no borders, so he's either going to have to add them in post or draw them over his drawing, which is not great practice. I like to preserve as much art as I can. So that's one that another one I've done. All right, let's see. I was not sure about this one. This is one I'm not very confident in, so we'll see how I like it now. All right. Something I've realized as I've matured is imperfections are important. For example, my cat scratched the cover of my leather journal, or my leather idea journal. At first I was really upset. Then it dawned on me that accidental imperfections set my cover apart from the others out there. And it reminds me of Mittens. It's a sign that I owned and used that book. The imperfections have sentimental value to me. If only my parents could see my flaws like that instead of being disappointed. I guess it's okay. I like to do long-winded build-ups sometimes. I think it can pay off better than it does here, but, you know, it's passable, I feel like. Okay, what's on this one? This is one about making comics. How's it coming along? Not too well, but I have a trick for writer's block. Vocal stem again, I'm sorry. Okay. Really, what's that? There, that's a better angle. I make something unintelligible, then I write, find the hidden meaning. That way people will unknowingly assign a false meaning doing the idea work for me. Yeah, you know, I think that's another, I think it's solid. You know, not my best work, and my best isn't great, I would say, but You know, I think it's a passable comic. Now here is maybe, at the time I thought, one of the better ones I've done in a while. So I'll show you guys to see. So you can see he's sitting down, making a comic, and I really like the detail here. I think it looks really good. So he's just thinking about, just kind of has nothing on his, he's trying to think of something and not coming up with anything. And let's get this to the last panel. There we go. Oh, sorry. I'm very sorry about that. Accidentally bumped the mic. Okay. So here you see the comic. It says, I think a long-winded comedy is the best. And then the other person responds, brevity is the soul of wit. So then the character says, are you mentally deficient? Do you have no sense of humor? Were you dropped on your head as a child? Well, so this is the comic he's making, but he can't come up with the very last panel, the punchline. And he says, I've got nothing. And this is the reveal as well, because I try to make it hard to tell while still making it true to the geometry of the room. Try to make it hard to tell that he was on the toilet, but this is the reveal. So the comedy, I think, comes more from that, but also just from, I think his style of writing it's just a little bit amusing, hopefully, to see him just kind of being a little bit unhinged. And so that's all I got for now. So I'm going to end the stream. For all of the nobody that watched, this has been drawing one, eating worm strip, and not inking it, and pretending that this is a sustainable workflow. So I guess I'll see you guys tomorrow.